Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our fifth Pillar Talk, y'all. We just can't believe it. 5 Pillar Talks down. And this month, our Pillar Talk is all about retirement planning. But if you missed last month, we talked about health and wellness. Hey, it was a great one. Lisa's going to drop it into the chat box. It looks like she already has. It's the recording where we really talked about some little simple habits that can really help us to change our health for the better. So if you missed it, it's in the chat box, and you can certainly watch it at any time in the future. It's also on our First United Bank website. We wanted to tell you about that. All right, without further ado, let's get started for today. I'm going to introduce you to our 3 wonderful speakers. Our first one is going to be John Kerry. John, will you go ahead and tell them about yourself, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. John Kerry. Been at First United Bank for about 30 years. Started the investment program 3 years ago and came to the bank right after I finished college. Have always been in love with finance and hope that we answer some of your questions today.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, John. So if you have questions at any time during this presentation, go ahead and drop them into the chat box, because we will make sure at the end we have a Q&A and we'll answer your questions. All right, Rebecca, will you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Calise. I work out of the Seguin office, and I've been with the bank for 5 years, 10 years in financial services. Before that, I did loans and accounting as a business owner. I'm looking forward to helping everybody get a better understanding on preparing for retirement.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca, you and I both have been with First United 5 years. I know it's been the best 5 years so far for both of us in our careers. All right, Rusty, will you please introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. Rusty Couts. 18 years with the bank. Me and my family moved from Kentucky to Oklahoma 18 and a half years ago. So we love Oklahoma. We love First United Bank, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, well, let's just dive into this. I would love to hear. So, John, if I was just starting out and wondering, like, hey, what could I do? Maybe just some best practices that I could start implementing. What advice would you give someone just to kind of help them to make sure that someday when they do decide to retire, that they can be more set up for that to be able to do it?
Yeah, so thank you, Jennifer. So, we're going to talk a little bit about several different things today, but addressing kind of easy things first. So if you work here or you work somewhere, always want to take advantage of the employer match. It's free money. It helps boost your retirement plan. And so you always want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. That is a great one. What else?
A lot of times plans will have annual contribution increases. And so that's a good practice to, if you get a salary increase or if your plan does increases for you, especially more so to the salary side. So each year, if you get a 2 or 3 or a 5%, if you're fortunate enough to get a salary increase, always go ahead and increase your annual contribution as well. Because as the panelists could tell you, it's money you won't miss. And because if you have it, odds are you're like me, you'll spend it on something. Mm-hmm. So increasing that, increasing your annual contribution is always a good idea as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are 2 great tips: employer match and annual contribution. And here's another great one that John's going to share with us.
So a key is, and all of us are going to talk about different things today, but your financial plan is a huge puzzle, and there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and you can't necessarily have one of them working and others not. And so having money saved for retirement is great, but you need to make sure also when you get into that time frame of thinking about retirement that you start really focusing on paying down your debt and paying off debts. That way, when the time comes, you're able to better manage the different pieces of your financial puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and you know what? I was just meeting with a couple this week, and I was talking with them because she wants to retire in a year. So I do financial coaching, but when it comes to investing, that's y'all's expertise. So I was talking with her, and one of the things I noticed is they had a truck loan, and it didn't have a huge balance on it. And so we actually talked just about this so that when she's no longer bringing in that income that she was bringing in, she won't have that $500 truck payment. So just super glad I just thought of that, how it really goes into that plan, because that's $500 a month that she doesn't have to try to come up with during retirement. And they were able to make that work. So some great tips here, y'all, some best practices that can really help anybody. All right, well, let's move to talking to Rebecca. And Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about making a plan so that when we do get ready to retire, we'll have a plan that can help us to be successful with that?
When you're looking at your retirement plan, there's a lot of benefits that are out there, and there's a lot of misconceptions about those benefits. I talked to some people that believe Social Security is not going to be there when they retire and think it's going to be bankrupt. And then I talked to other people who think it's going to completely support them in retirement. And the truth is probably somewhere in between there. When the system was originally came in, it was designed to supplement your pension and your personal savings. It was meant to be one leg of a three-legged stool. And if we look at it that way, the system works, but only if you have your other pieces of the puzzle, your 401k or your retirement accounts, or your pension if you're lucky enough to have them, and then your personal savings.
Yeah, so you've got your retirement as one leg of the stool, your personal savings, and then you also have Social Security. So that's your three-legged stool. That's awesome. Love hearing it. And tell us about some ways we can make sure we understand our benefits to see how they kind of coordinate, you know?
As you start getting close to retirement, it's a great time to start looking at what your Social Security is going to be. There's options as far as when you take it, how you take it, whether it's your spouse's or your own. There's a lot of strategies when it comes to that. And it should be something that is really thoroughly researched and looked into, or you could be leaving a lot of money on the table and making a very costly mistake.
Mm, yes, completely agree. We don't need any costly mistakes when it comes to our money. And what else would you tell us about making
Well,
that plan?
understanding how all this can work together, understanding what Medicare can do for you and what options you have there, and what you can do with your retirement savings to possibly adjust it where it's maybe a little more income focused and less growth focused. Just making sure that everything you're doing works together.
Mm, that's really good. And where do you think the majority of your income is going to go when we retire? What do you think that's going to be? I'm going to hear from y'all. I know y'all know the answer.
Well, hopefully they've got all their debt paid off, but we still have all the basics, utilities, food, gas, which have unfortunately become very big. And medical expense during retirement is one of your largest expenses. And with some good choices with your Medicare, you can reduce, how big of a cost that's going to end up being.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And so we have an idea now of some best practices, how we can make a plan. And Rusty, we would love to hear from you who could tell us a little bit about what we can do to stick to the plan. Because I know our emotions can often get the best of us, especially when it comes to money.
Oh, absolutely. Your financial decisions, unfortunately, become emotional decisions. And changing your habits is really a hard thing to do. And the only thing harder than changing a habit is sticking with a habit you have changed. And market volatility can certainly make you rethink your plan of, do I really want to continue to do this? And it really, you just need to rethink what market volatility is all about, because market volatility will allow you to buy shares less expensively than you had in the past. And market volatility can be your friend if you have time before you retire.
Yeah, let's look at a chart that kind of shows people that so you can tell us a little bit about what this is telling us.
Yes, and this is rather, uh, you really can't believe this until you run the numbers. But if you stay fully invested it shows that your 20-year return has been 9.5% if you only missed the best 10 days. Okay, now you're down to 5.34. You missed 20 days, 2.64, 30 best days, you haven't really made any money. So the point of all this is, okay, the market's down, I'm scared, I need to pull my money out. Well, the only problem is you don't know when to get back in, and nobody does.
No. And there's no guess. It's like, should you get in now? And then that's how you start missing those days because you pulled out and then you want to get in whenever you think that it's going up, but then you don't really know. And so you're playing with a crystal ball is what I call it. And if you just stayed and rode the roller coaster, then guess what? You're going to have a way better, it's proven. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. So I love this chart. All right. So what else would you tell us, Rusty, about sticking to our plan?
Well, it's easy, again, talking about changing habits, it's easy to lose your focus. Well, it's easy to let the noise of the market, the noise of the news on the television, you hear people talking to you, and who do you want to listen to? And using a financial advisor, we can keep you focused on your goals, which we have. When we sit down with you, we will help you create goals and stay focused so that you can achieve those goals.
Mm. That's the reason I love working with a financial advisor. And a lot of people don't realize that you can actually just say, hey, I want to meet with you and let you just look at my plan, and it costs nothing to meet with y'all, just as that initial visit. But then if I decide to do business with you, you can also help make sure that I can get those better returns like we saw on the last chart, because you'll keep me invested versus letting me jump out whenever the market is at its worst and then thinking I'm going to get back in later. So I completely agree that using an advisor to help with that is like one of the best things we can do to help us to make sure we can achieve our retirement plans. So what else would you tell us, Rusty?
Well, and I don't think we can talk too much about staying focused because it's just so easy to not be focused. But however, the plan that we will create for you will be flexible enough to, if when life happens, that we can change some things to keep you going in the right direction.
Absolutely. So these are all wonderful tips that we've heard today about um, just what we need to do. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Lisa. And so one of the things that you're going to notice from each of our pillar talks is we're going to give you 3 simple things that will hopefully help you as you're looking at making any small habits become like long-term life things that you do consistently. And that is the first thing, to always make your habit achievable. Start with small things like what John told us that were best practices, like increasing your contributions annually as you get an increase. That way, before you start getting the money and you haven't gotten used to it yet, you're already putting more to your future retirement. Also, make it a priority to yourself. A great way to do that is if there's a way to automate it, as John was saying. Like, hey, if there's auto increase where you don't even have to think about it, go with that, because right there, that'll help you to start increasing it as you get an increase. Hopefully you're able to get one. And then also visualize your success. Some of you may be young and you may be thinking, oh my, retirement is so far away. Like I can't even imagine it yet. But really start thinking about what you want your retirement to look like. Do you want to be a traveler? Are you someone who really wants to be sitting on the front porch with your grandkids and, not really doing a whole lot except spending time with your family? Really figure out, what does that look like for you? And when you visualize it, you'll be more likely to make it happen. And that's going to help you to have the retirement that you desire. All right. Well, here's another thing we're going to ask y'all to do really quickly, because we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, which is what we wanted for this. And that was, we're going to give you 2 minutes to take this survey. And in this survey, all we're asking you to do is rate yourself and how you feel that you're doing in each of these 4 pillar habits: our faith, financial well-being, health and wellness, and personal growth. And I'm going to quit talking for just a second and let you answer the survey. Lisa has dropped a link to be able to answer this so that you can quickly do it. We will move to our next slide. And this right here is just to let you know, next month we'll be doing our next Pillar Talk, and it's going to be about personal growth. So if you're interested in developing your personal growth, flexing that personal growth muscle, please go ahead and Lisa has dropped a link into the chat box, or you can use the QR code and you can register for next month's Pillar Talk. And we'll hear from 3 wonderful speakers sharing ways that we can all develop our personal growth. So let's go ahead and move on to our Q&A session. So I've noticed that there was a question in the chat box, a few questions. So who would like to take the one that Marcy Johnson asked about the QDRO? As part of the QDRO when she divorced, she was entitled to half of her ex-husband's pension with a former employer of his, and should she leave it where it is or take distributions that deposit monthly into her 401k or other Roth, such as a IRA, such as a Roth?
And the answer is, if I'm going to take that one, is it's up to her. If she's comfortable where the money is right now and she can get the service that she needs, and if she understands the risk of the investment she's currently in, and she can get the paperwork done where it currently is to get what she needs, then she can probably just stay. But this is all things that we could help her with if she wanted us to.
Excellent. I know sometimes that one of the things I've always heard from people like Dave Ramsey, for example, talking is that at least if you roll it over, you have an opportunity to invest it in way more different investment options. And so that's something to always consider, but it really depends on kind of like what you said, like, are you happy where it's at? Do you understand the benefit? And if you want to roll it over and start taking those distributions, just make sure there's no penalties and things like that. I know that. Anything else y'all would add to that?
I think in a lot of cases it is a good idea to move it to an IRA if the old 401k does not have investments that suit your place in life, or move it to your new 401k here at the bank. I personally moved a small 401k in when I came on board because we have some pretty good investment options here at the bank. And in that case, it made sense. But for people that retire, they don't have a new 401k to move it into. And most 401ks do not really have great options for retirement income. So at that point, it may be a little more important to move it into an IRA where you can have a little more control.
Okay, and I see another one that says, can I roll an IRA back into my 401k here at First United since I returned to the bank in 2020? It was a rollover I took when I left in 2019. I don't know if other people can see it. It may have just came to me.
I've done it for a bank employee, so yes, you can.
So sounds like, Becky, the answer to your question is yes, you can roll it back here into your 401k at First United. All right. And there was a question about the Medicare and More workshop presentation. That is out there on our First United Bank website. So if you go out there, you can certainly find it under our workshops. It'll be listed. And Donna, I can send you that link whenever we're done. I'll make a note. What other questions does anyone have? You'll have to use the chat box, or you could actually raise your hand. If you raise your hand, I will be able to see, and I can ask you to come off of mute. So that's another option. So what are some common questions maybe y'all have seen from your clients recently, like things that maybe like you've got a lot of questions on since the market's been kind of, not doing as well as we would have hoped it to stay at. But we have to have bear markets and we have to have bull markets.
Well, I'm going to ask John Kerry, when is a good time to start saving for retirement?
At birth.
At birth?
But, the earliest the better. Obviously time is your number one asset. Money, salary, plans, these things are all important, but time, I don't want to age any of us on the call, but I can tell you that time is your number one asset. So the earlier you can start any plan, whether that's a faith plan, a financial plan, a workout plan, the sooner you can get into it, the longer you can go through it, the better that the outcome will be.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Hey, I have some more questions, y'all. It says, how do you determine if a traditional or a Roth IRA is best for your circumstance?
I would say you have to know your own tax bracket. If you're in a high tax bracket and you do not have a 401k or something that is tax deferred that you're contributing to, then the traditional IRA may give you the write-off you need that makes it easier to contribute. On the other hand, if you already have a 401k or a tax deferred account, having that Roth IRA so that in retirement you have some income that's taxable and some that is not can allow you control the tax bracket you might be in when you start taking that income. Also, if you're young and you have a long time for growth, the Roth is probably a great option for you.
I love that answer. Okay, so I have another one here. It says, say you already have a Roth 401k, would it be smart to also open a Roth IRA?
Yeah, so I'll jump in there too, Rusty. It all goes back to you want to utilize what is there for you. So if you have a Roth 401k, you want to make sure that you're utilizing that to the fullest as far as the maximum contribution, the employer match. If you don't have those options, then yes, a traditional Roth IRA would be a good plan as well. But always utilize what you have first to the maximum that you can do.
Absolutely. And the annual contribution currently for people to be able to put to a Roth 401k is what? Can somebody answer that? Per year?
Depends on the age. But I
True.
believe for younger people, I think this last year was either 18 or 19,000, and you get a 6,000 a year increase after you get past 50. So you can put quite a bit away if it's in a 401k.
Yeah, and it goes back to what John was saying. So as long as you can max out that, then you could look at an Roth IRA because you have a lot of money you could put into that 401k. So you might as well maximize that before you start looking at a separate IRA. Would you agree? Is that what you were trying to say, John? So Lori Moreland says, can you elaborate a little more on taking her husband's Social Security versus your own?
I would say when you get close to retirement, you should check which one's going to be more because you are entitled to either half of your spouse's full retirement benefit, assuming you're at full retirement age, or 100% of your own retirement benefit. For some women who maybe were out of the workforce for a number of years, staying home with their children or working part-time, half of their husbands may be greater than 100% of their own. In that case, obviously, you take the higher amount. So you really have to check both.
And it says, what if I really just have gotten started and want to retire in about 5 years, even though I have been here 8 years? So what would you advise somebody who's wanting to retire sooner but hasn't really been investing that long?
Can sit down with an advisor and we'll run the numbers.
Yes, and they'll tell you if you can do it or not.
Yeah, we'll see
Or,
what you got, what you want to do, and we'll see if we can get there.
absolutely. Also, if somebody was going to meet with a financial advisor for the first time, what information should they bring to meet with you?
Well, you can bring all of your current retirement plans, savings, bank accounts, any other assets, and your debt. I like to ask about your family also.
That's great. And by the way, um, Brett Rogers, who is definitely a savings expert when it comes to retirement, he was telling us it's 20,500 that you can put to your employer 401k a year to max it out. So that's quite a bit of money. So that's awesome. And then, as you had mentioned, there's the catch-up option as well. So what is the process of accessing a spouse's Social Security if they died before retirement age?
When you go online at the Social Security Administration, all options should come up, or if you go in there. But go in there educated, because sometimes the help you get at the Social Security office is less than helpful. So, there's a lot of information on ss.gov where you can create your own account to see what your targeted Social Security benefits will be at different ages. Also, a lot of good articles and stuff on there as well.
Awesome. That's good. So just doing a little research on and going into the office, and that should help you to figure out about accessing your spouse's Social Security. And then if you're young and you currently don't have any kind of a financial plan, what's the best way to form one? Is the question, just to kind of start from scratch.
When someone comes into my office for the first time, I've got lots of questions. We're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about what retirement would look like in a perfect world. I'm going to ask you about your family, what things you like to do, things you don't like to do. But we'll start at the beginning. You don't have to start with a large amount of money. What's important is to get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so meeting with you is probably the very first step. So just coming in and just letting you kind of lead, and then you'll tell them what they need. So those are great questions. I don't see any more at this time, and we're at 12:30. So we just want to tell you all, thank you so much. And if you do have questions like afterwards, don't hesitate to reach out to John, Kerry, Rebecca, or you can email financialwellbeing@firstunitedbank.com, and we'll get the questions to the three speakers today, Rebecca, Rusty, and John, and they'll be able to help us to answer your questions. But we just want to say thank you so much for being here today. We hope you found some nuggets of wisdom today that will help you to be able to, achieve your retirement goals. So thank you all, and we hope to see you next month at our next Pillar Talk.